Buy versus rent. A lot of us are going to face that challenge in the next 5-10 years. What is the return on that investment of the house, right? Is it just cheaper to pay rent over 40 years?
It's not a very mathematical decision. House buying is not, never been. It's a very emotional decision. Most of the time it's not actually driven by you, but the entire family. I start my day at 6 actually in the morning, actively. And I finish whatever I need to communicate to anybody by 8
PM.
So that's AM.
Oh, okay.
In the 2 hours. So anybody who wants to, I want somebody to sort of, do something or get some stuff. I would say my mental bandwidth is free then.
So, Saurabh, I think we've all read about you. Before coming, everyone has to sort of do some sort of a homework.
Great, okay.
So I hope everyone's done that. So I'm not going to go into like basic intro stuff,
Okay.
right? So let's just dive right in. And by the way, we'll keep this interactive. If anybody has questions in the middle, if anybody wants to interject, please feel free. This is full town hall format. Cool? And he's also requested that.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Got it. So let's start with just like how's the business doing? What's happening?
So I think for us particularly, in terms of business, I think post-COVID and, a lot of other things have changed a lot in business environment. And every business has sort of gone through a different, different kind of trajectory, right? I think particularly our industry is a derivative of real estate industry, right? I think what probably many of you would know what is happening to real estate prices, the kind of, demand that has come up. It's sort of at its all-time high.
What's happening to the real estate industry?
So, I think what happened, a couple of things happened. First of all, I think during the whole COVID, etc. phase, the construction sort of stopped for a lot of time, right? And there's a lag. So you stop something, then you have a limited inventory. Whenever you have a limited inventory, the prices will go up because the demand is always there. Also because, so that's on the supply side. Also on the demand side, many people postponed their decisions because of the whole COVID uncertainty. And that demand also came post-COVID. So you had more demand and you had less supply because of the pause in sort of construction and other in general activity. So suddenly, coupled with obviously other, like changes in terms of how people feel about whether they should buy or not. I think that's still, if you ask me, yet to be discovered. But, I think the basics of demand supply, in my view, are resulting in what you are seeing today, which is, in a way good for our business because we're a derivative of that, right? Because the more homes people will get into, the more homes they will buy or rent or whatever.
So business is good right now.
Business is good right now for us. Yes, it's good.
How many of you have felt the increasing prices in real estate? Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, my apartment, my landlady is asking me to leave because she's increasing the price by 30% in 1 year in Gurgaon.
Yeah.
And like 30%, ma'am, like हमारे contract में लिखा है 5 years. She's like, नहीं क्या फर्क पड़ता है contract का?
So yeah, interesting stuff. So I was also facing a similar situation, so I decided to buy that apartment actually, and it turned out to be a good decision because in that 6 months itself,
So let's just start with the buy versus rent. A lot of us are going to face that challenge in the next 5-10 years. What is the return on that investment of the house, right? Is it just cheaper to pay rent over 40 years of?
See, it could be, but is it what aligned to the kind of the kind of definition of life you have or the family that you have? See, it's not a very mathematical decision. House buying is not, never been. It's a very emotional decision. Most of the time it's not actually driven by you, but the entire family altogether. So when those things come into play, the decision is not rational, is not mathematical. And so is with, most of the purchase that we do as consumers. The decision is not just mathematical. In fact, we make money because the decision is not mathematical. If the decision is mathematical, then business is like commodity. They won't make money. There's no delta. So the decision, the more emotional, the more complex the decision is, I think there is higher chances of the business, to generate some margin there.
You mentioned it's a deeply emotional market, right? Your customer is very emotional. That's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that you can make your margin. The bad thing is that they're emotional about it.
That's true.
Right? So it's a services business. And you could have, you were a consultant before, and when you were trying to think of, what to start up in, I'm sure people would have pushed you, think product, think scale, think automation, but you chose interior design, which is perhaps the least productized of businesses. So, do you regret that?
It's been close to 9 years, we have been doing this. I think this question we have probably asked ourselves multiple times in a day, if not less. So, and the approach that finally I think we have taken, and also we are glad that we have taken is, and it's a very important sort of, at least business funda which I tend to apply now, is personalization at scale. See, eventually, interior design as a business or any service is not meant to scale. It's fundamentally non-scalable. because every element, like every customer needs something different. There is a human interaction to your sales and design or whatever, or your teaching, for example, etc. Right? Then the item that you're making, the product or service, is largely bespoke. So the value chain actually doesn't have any economies of scale. So ideally, it should remain a fragmented business. It should remain small, fundamentally. But now, now comes various things. For example, technology, internet, right? Or processes, organization structure. A lot of, like the thinking of the modern business world, right? How do you leverage that in each of those elements and remove that diseconomies of scale to create some economies, or at least not have diseconomies? Once you start thinking about that, I think that's obviously very broad statement, then you can serve any kind of customer in a service industry. And I genuinely believe personalization at scale is a very, very nascent concept in India, and very only few industries are trying to do it today. And there is a massive startup and business opportunity, because eventually customers need personalization, be it jewelry, be it home sector, interiors, fashion, and even to cars, etc. All of those things, houses, all of that. People need that. But is our value chain truly agile enough, or has those economies to offer customers, that kind of economies? For example, if you see, China kind of manufacturing today, they are making real-time sort of products. You design a product and you're getting that product in the right tat and price. And by personalization, I don't mean you jack up the prices to 10x. You mean personalization at scale means you are able to produce it at near mass production rates. So that's also a key. So if your prices are, like 3x, 4x, it won't fly.
How does it work? So how do you personalize that scale? Do you have templates? Do you basically figure out that these are the 20 categories and then have templates for each of those categories? Is that what you mean by personalization at scale?
Yeah, so that's what we mean. For example, if you see the new apartments that builder is giving, it's like a 3 BHK, 4 BHK apartment. So where builder is giving it largely, what we call as a, bare shell. The largest items that people need there is kitchens, wardrobes, TV units, storages, etc. Right, which is sort of 70%, which is made from wood fundamentally. And there's a concept in wood which is called modular furniture. So modular furniture are essentially panels. You cut them in various sizes and then you join them to make a unit, and then you combine many units to make a complete furniture, right? So essentially, if you modularize furniture a lot, you go to the basic components like plywood, hardware, etc. That is where your economies come in, and your production process is a sort of batch size one, which is unit size one, which has the ability to produce something which is different for you, which is different for me, with the help of technology, a 3D sort of tool where you can really drag and drop the inputs. Customer can select the choices, do a change in width, depth and height, all of that. So if you marry technology and a bulk buying of a lot of raw materials with agile manufacturing, it's possible that you at least 70-80% of the home you can really break the diseconomies at least.
Correct. So templatize it
to the core, from bottom up actually, from the raw material to intermediate product to finished product, and still giving customers like millions of choices actually. Pretty much.
We have a classroom upstairs and the name of the classroom is NPS. Okay, it's Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
So what do you think when you're trying to scale personalization, does the NPS like invariably then go down?
So in the beginning, yes, because your solutions are half-baked. It's a very, hard to sort of, digest also, but I think that's what happens. When you're trying to make any solution, it is imperfect. So, you have to put a lot of manual intervention to just sort of stitch it together. So especially solutions like this, at lower scale, they tend to be moderate NPS. But as you gain scale, since you are the only organized player in such a fragmented industry or large player, you tend to move the market along with you. And you suddenly change the NPS drastically actually. Because you have such a big account in a way to everybody. You have such also technology, processes, you can dictate so much actually that you can start changing the industry. And that's where the inflection point of NPS comes in. So scale is eventually beneficial in personalized problems. But only if you are able to achieve scale, you will see a new life. And it's very easier to die in between.
So do you
the
think,
zero to moderate scale.
I mean, you've raised what, 450, $500 million already. You valued at over $1 billion. How does the company change over time? I mean, you started what, 9 years ago?
Yeah, 2015. Yeah.
2015. We are at 2023 now. You've gone through cycles up and down. I don't know, COVID, no COVID. Just take us through that journey of, like that 9 years.
And that's a difficult one. I don't see. I'll just try to share whatever I can recall right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a very different journey. Like when we started, I think if I imagine now, look back now, we were more like bunch of passionate folks, who obviously didn't know the industry that well or the dynamics of the industry that well, who were just focused on more how consumer feel the need of the solution, right? We as consumers, like, move to Bangalore, get the interior done. How would we do it? We don't know a contractor there. And I am not actually comfortable giving 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs to a person who I don't know. So that's not the kind of purchase that, our kind of generation or target consumer does. So you start with that problem statement, very simple, very naive also. And you just try to chase that. I think for a large part of our journey, we were just, whenever you're confused, you're distracted, you again go back to the root problem. Like we are solving it for the consumer. This is the persona of the consumer. What does the consumer need? And it needs, apart from, of course, a lot of, analytical decision making.
Let me just stop you there. So when you started, did you want to build a platform or did you just want to build a service that solves that problem?
So, see, we realized very early on that we have to build it like a platform to solve it for thousands of customers. If we build it like a service, we would definitely be, a larger design studio, which of course that was not the game that we
wanted to play. Okay.
We wanted to play. So we know that we have to, componentize, platformize a lot of things. How many, how much, I think that was sort of a journey, very frankly. But yeah, so I think we were that, coming back to, we were just very consumer focused, just trying to put ourselves in consumer shoes, meet a lot of people, etc. And then try to devise that. I think, and only after a couple of years, it, then starts taking shape. And I think starts taking shape of more of a business in a way.
Do you remember your first fundraise?
Yeah.
What was that story?
So I think for me it was a different. So I think I started a company called Design Up in Delhi, in Kalkaji, from a rooftop actually, after graduating, after doing my MBA. So I sort of went back to consulting and then found out that, again, it's sort of difficult for me to do consulting. I'm not enjoying that much. So I started a company. And at the same time, Livspace was there actually in Bangalore. Anuj and Ramakant actually started it, who was doing it in a much better way than we were trying to do in Design Up.
So your company was called Design Up.
Design Up. So that company was, it was a small sort of startup then. It got acquired by Livspace.
Got it.
And that's when, I joined Livspace in a way. So it was, two companies sort of merged together.
So you finished your MBA in what I believe is the second best business school, ISB. Get the joke. It took you time to understand my joke. That's not funny anymore. And then you went into consulting. You went to Accenture, I believe.
Yeah.
And then you realized it's not for you. So you started a company.
Yeah.
And then I believe within 7 months, you ended up selling the company.
Close to a year actually. So I started close to
almost a year. So how does that happen? Like, how do you build a company and then exit or merge it with another company? How does that happen?
See, I think at that point of time, if you ask me, what was really happening is a lot of internet was there, e-commerce has started a lot actually back in 2014-15. I'm talking about. I think and services was still a very nascent concept for internet first brands. Largely, I think so. Particularly, Design Up was thought, using that. Why don't we bring those kind of services also on internet? Because it's the same TG who doesn't understand where to buy things from, and also doesn't know how to get the work done in homes, etc. from. So that's where it originated. And I think if you see a lot of startups of that era are focused on services in many ways. Like urban companies also one. Right? So I think internet and all evolution of startup happened in some phases. In a way, I think we are going through a different phase now. We can talk about that as well. But coming back to your question, so given that the momentum in the market was towards that direction, and fortunately we were also in that direction, it was easier for us to sort of
the wave was with you.
The wave was with us.
So you followed the trend.
Yeah. Or we sort of maybe we also predicted the trend maybe.
But so after you merged and then you started doing your fundraise, was it hard to fundraise or was it quite straightforward because of this wave? because you followed the trend?
No, so I think market also went through very different phases. Market sometimes were easier, sometimes was difficult, very difficult, COVID, etc. All of that. So fundraise is never easy. I think in whatever market situation is, fundraise is always difficult.
How large was your first round?
So close to $4-5 million was the first round.
And how much progress had you made in the company to go to a VC and say, I want $4 million?
I think we had our thesis in place, at least what we were trying to do. Like we had the persona in mind, like this is the customer segment, this is the size of the market, how many people's moving into a new homes, how much we can capture, and this is the kind of TG. So you can really build an internet first brand there. I think we had the
clarity,
the basics there, but obviously in terms of proof points, we really had to do a lot, and that comes through.
How many customers did you have before you raised your first round?
So we didn't have a lot. I think we had close to, at a monthly run rate level, 8 to 10 customers at that time.
So 8 to 10 customers, and do you think that's true even today?
Sorry,
to be able to raise, let's say, 4-5 million, would that be enough scale today, or?
See, it depends on, I think, industry to industry. Say our product is more complex. So 8 to 10 is still a good number. In many cases, close to 100, 200 orders it might take.
Okay.
So at least, I think more than that. So how can you be really clear about, I'm not saying the gears and nuts and bolts, but at a broader level, that this is what you are trying to build. It might take you 40, 50 customers, 100 customers, or maybe a couple of customers. Or maybe, for many of the folks who are from a particular industry or an experience, they know it from day zero also. Like for example, if you ask somebody who has worked in sort of fashion commerce, they know it. Like they have served thousands of customers already. And they know the inherent problems that they're trying to serve. But that clarity, what you're trying to build, and also for what kind of scale is required, I would say.
To be able to.
Yeah, that's the minimum.
So we have a huge mix here, right? And a lot of them are going to sit for placements. And you obviously took a placement. How long did you work in Accenture for?
So I worked for a couple of months actually.
Couple of months. 2 months was enough.
Maybe, yeah.
So, I mean, like looking backwards, would you just start up right away? Or did you think that Accenture stint was actually helpful?
So I worked before my B school actually for close to 3 years. And I was in consulting, so I got a good hang of, various kind of industries, businesses. I also was, at that time, very closely engaged with a couple of my friends' startups. And also other startups, I was EIR in few of the startups. So I think, and also the kind of consulting I was in, it was not a very established consulting firms. In fact, it was I who was trying to create an office in, where company hasn't really gone, or a sector where company hasn't really established. So I think from my journey, I'm very glad that, it was very entrepreneurial from the beginning. And I think that's when...
Even as an employee, you had roles which were entrepreneurial in nature.
Very, very, very. So, like in my first company, we were trying to set up the Dubai office for our company, right? And it was a new market. So I think my first job was never a template which was there and I was following that. Which was, in hindsight, I really am, I would say, very fortunate to have that. So I always had that sort of knack, that I need to start something, whenever. And I tasted a couple of, I would say, small success in those roles. So that gives you good feedback. That, if that template works for you, you think, someday maybe, whenever the time is right, you'll start. So I think for me particularly, that leap of faith was not, apart from the education loan, of course, was not a very, very, very bigger one. But for many of you, it could be, right?
But was the MBA helpful?
Yeah, I think, it was helpful a lot in many ways. Not for any particular startup or something, but I think, coming from Indian education background, obviously all of us know engineering is, what you study, what you not study, etc. All of that. I think it makes sense to get formally introduced to the concepts of businesses that have worked, frameworks, etc. I think these are still obviously concepts and frameworks. When you go and apply, you have to really make things your own. But I think from an awareness perspective, it has helped. You'll not try to do same mistakes that you might have read people have done, or there might be few ways that resonate with you. I think sometimes, slightly, on a tangential note, sometimes all this is a way to discover yourself. I think that's what I believe in fundamentally, right? All education, all interactions, maybe this interaction as well, or any other interaction. You're just trying to discover yourself more. I think during my ISB phase, I discovered myself more. Like which are the things that interest me, which are the things that come very naturally to me, which are the things which are in my sort of difficult zone, out of comfort zone. So I'll always have to hire those folks and have to hire really good folk for that. So I went through a lot of such awareness and discovery, I would say. That has a lot for me particularly.
So what do you hire for and what do you do yourself?
So I don't do anything myself now. See, apart from two things, I actually interact with a lot of consumers and I'm deeply involved in new product developments a lot. These are two things which I'm really involved in. But I generally believe in, of course, you have to hire really, really smart folks, really, really passionate folks, very entrepreneurial, with the same vision that you have. I think like 99% of my work as an operating leader is really finding the right folks. Like most of the folks that and in startups particularly, I work with are not your colleagues, are your friends and colleagues both. Like for the past 9 years or whatever, 6 years, some 5 years, you have spent like 18 hours, 20 hours a day with them. You don't have actually any friend circle apart from them now. So you can work. So for you to obviously work with them and achieve the output, that is very critical. And sometimes I sort of go back to my sort of hostel days in engineering, how groups are formed, teams are formed, how you make a team to achieve a sort of event or something. I think those principles, if you ask me, are still relevant today, and I sometimes go back. A lot of time actually go back and look for those principles again in my hiring. Like, can I really, can two of us really disagree on something and still work together or not? It's very important because, and similarly, is it possible that we can spend a lot of time together so that, even we have some ad hoc ideas. I am not hesitating to call somebody and really write a document, do 5 proof points. I can just casually tell somebody, this is the gut feeling that I have. Can you work with that or not? As simple as that. Maybe, as close to as you speak to your friend in a way. So to me, your hiring comes closer to selecting your friends.
How do you check that in an interview? Like, I think I'm really bad at interviewing. Like, I don't know what questions to ask.
Yeah, I think analytical obviously is very easy. There are a lot of frameworks and tests. See, I think the finally it comes down to a lot of intellectual honesty and truth. If you are able to communicate to somebody that this is how you operate and this is what you want, rather than just a lot of sugar-coated stuff, more often than not you hear the truth from the same person, and that's where the equations start, right? Like at least in my whatever selection process in interviews, I tend to be very clear about what we are trying to build, what is not solved, what is solved, what are the fuzzy things, why am I here? There has to be some motive why money is important, how much money is important, etc. So I think obviously you have to take the first step forward.
Do you believe in the 70-hour thing that's happening these days?
It's very controversial, but I'll say. See,
we will cut this part out of the video. You can say whatever.
No, it's fine. See, everybody has its own.
Livspace founder says 70.
Everybody has its own view. See, I'll share my opinion and view on it. See, any creation, any founding team person, creation stems from a lot of passion. And when you're passionate, generally you don't see the clock. See, that's a hard reality. And it doesn't take a toll also, very frankly. If I look back and say, those were difficult times, hard times, all of that, but it wasn't a mental toll. We were enjoying what we were trying to build. We are still enjoying what we are trying to build. So, and I think that's true for every artist also. That's true for a lot of people who are creating a lot of things. And any business is also that. Even a functional leader is also that. Somebody is, let's say, trying to create a supply chain. You're creating something. So till the time somebody is enjoying, it's fine. And it's a very personal decision how many hours somebody wants to spend, depends on family time, personal time, all of that.
So let's move on to the next step.
Yeah.
I want to understand what your day looks like. As someone who's running a $1.2 billion company, so many employees, so many customers. I keep reading a lot of numbers on your website, 100,000 rooms delivered, this and that, right? What does your day or your week or your month look like? Can you just take us through and help us visualize your life?
Particularly, I like to plan things a lot. My day, week, at least bi-weekly, monthly meetings are perfectly planned in the calendar. Like I generally tend to plan a bit more, I would say, so that things don't move here and there, otherwise they create chaos. So calendar is very critical. I think the organization of calendar in terms of which meetings you have to definitely be present in and with full attention. So I try to color code that a lot, so that I don't miss those meetings. I tend to be very fresh in those meetings because my real value add is in those meetings. In many meetings, obviously, it is you're there to just see nothing is going off track. But many of those meetings there's an active involvement that you need. So I tend to sort of segregate that. Because see, everybody has a limited energy and it's not possible to remain same throughout the day. So that's why I try to move the important things up also in the calendar, if you ask me. I start my day at 6 actually in the morning, actively, and I finish whatever I need to communicate to anybody by 8
PM.
So that's AM.
Oh, okay.
In the 2 hours. So anybody who wants to, I want somebody to sort of, do something or get some stuff that I'm sort of I would say my mental bandwidth is free then. Like I don't have any tasks to do.
So 6 to 8 a.m., whatever you have to tell somebody, whatever you have to delegate, assign.
That's generally I'm done with that. At least we'll drop a text that somebody should call me there and then do it. So that nothing is in my plate. Then there are more regular day-to-day things, and all those tend to be very planned for me actually, slightly over planned also if you ask me. And every meeting has a sheet attached to it in terms of what was the status of the action item that we discussed last week now. So it tends to be more structured.
So 8 a.m. now. Next.
Yeah, then then you sort of start your day generally office at 10, 11, of course that, and then you start back to back meetings.
The meetings keep happening. So what percentage of meetings are review meetings of work already done? What percentage are brainstorming meetings for things yet to be done? How many investor calls you have to do?
See, obviously, investor calls and other things are
seasonal,
ad hoc, etc. See, I would say, brainstorming meetings probably would be 25-30%, not more than that. Rest are more cadence, regular review meetings, if you ask me today, in my calendar. Because those 25-30% are generally the new stuff. Like any new business that you are trying to launch, any new product, any new geo you are trying to launch. So those are largely around the new initiatives. And those 70% is a BAU in a way, the work which is happening. And you need to have a tighter grip on that. So that's what happens. I also tend to spend a lot of time with people eventually. So generally lunch at lunchtime, or in general coffee, in general meeting after office hours also. So, a large part of my time generally goes in meeting a lot of the team, so that, I always get a pulse of, how things are really moving on the ground. And, I believe, and, sometimes I'm paranoid also about that, is, am I really connected to the system, or am I disconnected from the system? So I think sometimes I wake up and not feel good about it, that I'm not connected to the system. So I tend to spend then more time in meeting everybody, talking to people, what's happening, what has changed, right? And maybe, I think in today's industry, things are so dynamic. I think it's a good practice that everybody should do, because things change also so rapidly that you stay connected to, the ground.
So one question about your review meetings. So how many employees do you have in your company?
Close to 4,000.
4,000. So there's probably a top 10% group, right, who carry a lot of the weight. My question is what are they doing differently from the rest 90%? What are some of the things that really help somebody stand out in your team?
See, I think a couple of things. One is, always one has to be entrepreneurial. One cannot wait for... See, what does entrepreneurial mean rather than an entrepreneur is, you own something. Like, we don't find excuses why it didn't happen. You try to make that work. At least multiple honest attempts to make that work before concluding it doesn't work. Right? So have that very high enthusiasm, spirit towards things.
Do you have any memory of anyone who's exhibited this?
A lot of people actually.
Give us an example.
For example, during COVID time, we were present, actually before that we were present in only metro cities of India, and not all actually. And there's, our, chief business officer Lalit was there. And we decided that, we'll use this as an opportunity just when COVID was sort of ending, that we'll expand. It will set the base for ourselves. So we are sitting, the world is closed, and we wanted to expand to 40 cities of India. Like every tier 2 city of...
From 4?
From 4.
Okay.
Which was a very bold call. So, how would you expand? How would you hire? How would you open the retail center? It was a different remote playbook that nobody's used to, especially out of our comfort zone, which was the tier 1 cities we could fly and meet people. It was tier 2 cities. By tier 2, I mean non-metro cities actually, right? So by entrepreneurial, I mean somebody owning that. And, this might be impossible also. We might achieve only 70% of it, but 70% of it is also a big number to achieve. And we actually opened most of our tier 2 cities in that, in that 1 year of COVID. We opened I remember every week one center at Livspace was opening up, and where the world is remote. So we made so much, nice playbooks of retail center, for example, I recall now. So somebody can really understand. The documentation was so good, somebody could read it. So, somebody took a lot of goal,
Initiative,
target,
yeah.
ownership. That they'll do it. They'll make it happen. That's obviously one thing, and then there are many things.
That's one. Second.
So that's one. So second is, see, be very, very honest, humble, true, whatever you say. See, nobody knows everything. Whatever position, whatever experience, whatever thing. See, everything is new fundamentally, right? World is changing, consumer segment is changing, everything changed, right? So, and especially the top leaders have to be very honest and humble. If they don't know anything, they have to say, yeah, I don't know, you will go have to figure it out for me. Even I don't know, I'll react to what you'll bring to me. And sometimes, I've seen many people, especially at senior level, it becomes difficult for them, which sort of limits where you can reach eventually. So I think that's, I would say, second thing which is important. Third, see, most of the things that you try to do at that level are multifunctional, cross-functional in nature. There's very limited which only you can do, like without support of other folks. So how good a team player, genuine team player you are, makes a hell lot of difference in what you can achieve. Like eventually, you have to bring a lot of people to the same vision, same roadmap to achieve something.
Who's a good team player and who's not a good team player?
See,
Like, how do I know if I'm a good team player?
See, a couple of traits I can tell you. See, being a good team player, I think, obviously, very, very clear roadmap or strategy or vision has to be there. Like, lot of less focus on I versus we is there. Generally, very open to work with different kind of people, traits, all of that. And generally, I think it's a belief of a good team player that like only we can achieve this. Sometimes, like I have come across these scenarios wherein I try to do something on my own, but I then remind myself that I will fail in this. It needs 10 more folks to come together. So obviously everybody goes through this. So you have a belief that I have to take these folks along, whatever it takes to achieve something. And when that is the ultimate belief, then you make a lot of compromises, you make a lot of whatever things, that adjusting that you need to do, over communication that you need to do. Maybe you need to explain one thing 100 times. So I think those are byproducts, if I would say. So that rigidness, you have to eliminate that to be a good team player, in my view.
Got it.
And always assume, like, there will not be a team leader, you are the team leader. Like the ownership of the team, leading a team, comes to the one who has visualized. Otherwise, it becomes a burden eventually.
One time I follow In Shorts, right? And In Shorts, I don't know if you remember, there was this news that came about Livspace, that your customers are, whatever, giving bad reviews, this and that. So I know it happens in every startup journey.
Yeah.
Like I have faced that as well. Like how do you manage that stress? Or does that stress you out in the first place at all?
No, it's stress. See, every obviously customer review is a feedback also to the system. It's a stress also. That's true, right? Eventually, and plus the kind of business that we are in, customer is very emotional in terms of, it's a home eventually. Like it can't go wrong. Right? There's no. So those feedbacks are critical. Obviously, and I think it's just a learning, I would say, to not get a lot of emotional about it, but rather again go back and see what you can correct. In that case also, and in general for everybody. So that's what we try to do every time. Like for that particular customer, if we can really correct things now, in what way we can correct? The customer who put in a lot of trust to buy your product or services, and how can we make those learnings available to everybody in the system, throw back into the system, so that it doesn't happen again. And I think it's a never-ending work, if you ask me. It will continue to.
Like, let's say you read an article which is like, let's say, somewhat negative, right? So then how do you manage your stress in that moment? Like, abhi gussa aa raha hai, abhi wo...
Yeah, but what can you do? I mean, you can only work on your inputs, right?
No, like in that one, like when you go to the bathroom, like, take a shower or whatever, you would go take a walk.
See, of course, what happens is when, these kind of things or anything generally comes up is you obviously try to dedicate your next few days intensively onto that. That's I think definitely happens, or any incident for that matter that happens. And instead of, waiting for weeks, to take it weeks to correct it, you try to channelize your energy so that you can probably achieve 70-80% of it just now. Get over with it.
How are these companies in the US, Angie's Home and House and all of those doing?
Where-
Home Lane. Hindi.
Home Lane is in India.
Home Lane is India.
Angie's List is,
Angie's List is
yeah,
there.
it's more service like Urban Clap.
That's
I
more
think.
Urban Clap.
Yeah, it's more.
House is based.
Yeah, House is a big company in the US, actually primarily solving for a lot of discovery. And
They charge per lead.
So they ask for consumers. So consumers discover a lot of good content. What I know is on House, and professionals.
Correct.
Professionals are rated in a way.
Right.
And they charge for a lot of discovery
Leads. They charge the professionals per lead or something.
Yeah, a lot of ad
Did you explore that
monetization.
model in India?
So I think design up started from that model. If you ask
Okay,
me.
got it.
But eventually, what we understood at Livspace is currently Indian consumer values underwritten promise a lot. So it is Livspace which underwrites, the whole transaction. While the components could be in a way platform. Many purchases are not really an open market kind of purchases yet, if you ask me. So, customer needs a lot of trust. I think you're solving for the trust deficit. So maybe those geographies have evolved beyond trust deficit. Maybe the government interventions are better. Agreements are in better place. Obviously I don't know a lot about those geographies, but here I think trust deficit is the first problem.
So when you say that you spend 60 to 70% of your time while having review meetings, so at your level, how important is it to actually micromanage things and keep an eye on everything that's happening in the company as compared to just taking strategic decisions?
Obviously, when you're building something initially, that's a different phase altogether. Because then everything is micromanagement, if you ask me. Because kuch hai hi nahi us waqt to. You're just trying to create few pieces.
Company's micro.
Companies micro, yeah, in a way. In terms of physics, the mass physics is not applied inside the nucleus. Quantum physics is different. So I think those rules are different. I think those are not taught in business. So I think when you're that small, typical business fundamentals don't work at all. Like you don't know what is micro and what is macro management, all of that. Like you don't care. You just need to get the work done. As simple as that in that time frame or maybe yesterday. Now, micromanagement is definitely not required. I don't think so. I think if you have hired the right team, they're rightly aligned, right cadence is happening, it's okay.
Considering that the consumer base and the customers are, getting more aware about sustainability and sustainable practices around the world. So how has that affected Livspace business? Like especially because the material that you use for your products, consumers are getting conscious about it.
Definitely.
So how have your practices changed, and where do you see Livspace in the future getting to a very sustainable, focused customer base in the future?
So definitely, I think in general, not for Livspace, but for the overall home improvement construction industry, sustainability is an important topic. Especially for the organized players, this topic is more critical. But if you see organized interior players today, much like Livspace as well, the kind of plywoods that you use, for example, etc., they are made in a much better way than the unorganized plywoods of the world. The kind of formaldehydes used, chemicals used. So organized industry is definitely way ahead of unorganized in terms of that. In terms of the kind of material which is used. Because I'll give you the reason is, because the kind of scale that they are achieving, it is very difficult for them to manage the other sort of materials. I think for our industry, construction/interior industry, consumer education will play a critical role. Also, I think a lot of government intervention is required to bring a lot of sustainable practices into the industries in general. In Europe, in the overall interior and construction industry, sustainable is a very big theme now. Like the entire Interzoom festival last time, which was a big Makkah for the furniture industry, was focused on sustainability. So I think if it is hit those developed economies now, maybe I think in a couple of years, 4-5 years, it should be a big theme in India as well.
On that note, Saurabh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And for answering all of our questions.